Chelsea have spent years collecting some of the most talented young players in football, but talent does not automatically become a team. And this is exactly why Jordan Henderson may matter more than people think. He is not joining Chelsea to become their biggest star. He is joining to become the connection between them. This squad already has speed, technique, and enormous potential, but young players do not only need minutes. They need someone who understands what happens when it becomes heavier than the tactics. Henderson has lived through title races, Champions League knockout nights, and the pressure of football's biggest international stage. He knows how elite dressing rooms communicate, how players respond after mistakes, and how a group survives when one match can define an entire season. That experience can give Chelsea's young players a shortcut. Not a shortcut to talent, but a shortcut to understanding. He can translate the manager's demands onto the pitch, connect different personalities, and help a collection of individuals become a functioning team much faster. Everyone is looking at what Henderson can still do with the ball. Chelsea may be signing him for something more important, what he can make everyone around him understand. But how can one veteran connect an entire squad faster than another expensive signing? Because Chelsea's problem has never been a lack of individual quality. The squad already contains players who can beat defenders, break pressure, and decide matches in one action. The harder task is making all of those individual instincts move in the same direction, and that is where Henderson can help immediately. A young player may understand his own role, but still fail to understand what the player beside him needs. One midfielder wants the ball early, another wants space to run into. A fullback moves forward, but the winger does not cover. A centre-back steps out, but nobody protects the space behind him. These are not always technical problems, they are communication problems. Henderson can become the voice between those actions. He can tell a midfielder when to hold, warn a defender before the press is broken, and remind an attacker that the next movement still matters even when he will not receive the ball. He does not need to control every touch. He needs to connect the decisions around them, and that can accelerate Chelsea's development. Instead of every young player learning the same painful lesson separately, Henderson can transfer knowledge before the mistake becomes expensive. He can explain what the manager wants in the language of the pitch, in the middle of the pressure, when tactical instructions are no longer words on a screen. This transfer is not only about depth, it is about reducing the time Chelsea need to become a team. And this is what young players need most. Not another lecture, but someone who has already survived the pressure waiting for them. Domestic football teaches players how to compete every week. Continental football teaches them what happens when there is almost no space for correction. One careless pass in a European knockout match can destroy months of work. One emotional reaction can change a tie. One moment of panic can turn control into elimination. Henderson understands that environment. He has experienced Champions League knockout football, international tournaments, and matches watched by millions across the world. He knows that the biggest stages do not always expose a lack of talent, they expose a lack of emotional control. That knowledge can be crucial for Chelsea's younger players. When the tempo rises, he can help them avoid rushing. When the stadium becomes hostile, he can remind them that the match has not changed simply because the noise has. When one player makes a mistake, he can stop the entire team reacting as though the night is already lost. Reputation tells young players what somebody achieved. Experience tells them what to do next. Henderson can show them how to prepare for a European away match, how to manage the first 10 minutes after half-time, and how to recognise when an opponent is emotionally vulnerable. Major matches are rarely controlled for 90 perfect minutes. They are won by surviving the difficult periods without losing structure or belief. Henderson has felt that pressure before. That means he can recognise panic before it spreads. But the footage tells an even more important story. Henderson should not arrive as an automatic starter as the centre of Chelsea's entire system. His value will come from specific moments and specific responsibilities. In possession, he can offer a simple passing angle in front of the defence. Rassi does not need to force the decisive pass every time. Sometimes the correct action is to move the ball away from pressure and allow Chelsea's more creative players to attack from a stronger position. Without the ball, his communication becomes even more valuable. He can recognise when the distance between midfield and defence is becoming dangerous. He can tell one player to step forward and another to remain behind the ball. He can protect the structure before the counter-attack begins. And late in matches, he can help Chelsea make the game smaller. Fewer uncontrolled transitions, fewer unnecessary risks, fewer moments where 5 players attack and nobody prepares for what happens if possession is lost. This is not spectacular work, but elite teams are built through the decisions that prevent chaos from happening. Chelsea should surround him with athletic players and avoid leaving him isolated in open midfield. He does not need to become the engine, he can become the steering wheel. And then comes the role no tactical camera can fully capture. Modern squads are built from different football cultures, different personalities, and different stages of development. Some players arrive as teenagers, others arrive after one strong season. Some speak confidently from the first day. Others need months before they feel comfortable enough to challenge a teammate. That makes the dressing room more than a collection of names. It becomes a translation problem. The manager can design the structure, but someone inside the squad must protect it every day. Someone must tell a young player when the standard has dropped without destroying his confidence. Someone must confront frustration before it becomes division. Someone must make sure that substitutes, starters and new arrivals still feel connected to the same objective. Henderson can become that bridge between the coach and the players, between established internationals and young prospects, between those who understand elite expectations and those who are still discovering them. He can support Chelsea's existing leaders rather than compete with them, because leadership is stronger when responsibility is shared. The real proof will not be dramatic speeches. It will be whether Chelsea recover faster after conceding, whether substitutes remain engaged, and whether the team stops looking like 11 separate careers. Here is the problem. Chelsea cannot hide. Experience can see the danger, but age still has 36. That is not a minor detail, and Chelsea cannot pretend that intelligence removes every physical limitation. Opponents will test his turning speed. They will drag him into wide areas, attack the space behind him, and create transitions that force him to cover more ground than his role should demand. If Chelsea use him as a lone defensive midfielder in an open game, the weakness will become obvious very quickly. A 2-year agreement also creates responsibility. A free transfer does not mean a risk-free transfer. There are wages, squad space, and minutes that could have gone to another player. The deal only works if Chelsea are signing the player who exists now, not the memory of the captain who once covered every blade of grass at Liverpool. That means selective use. Start him when control is more important than speed. Bring him on when the team needs to protect a lead. Pair him with midfielders who can recover quickly. Give him nearby passing options and avoid turning every match into an end-to-end race. His intelligence should reduce the physical demand, not become an excuse to ignore it. This is a test for Chelsea as much as it is for Henderson. Only now does the past matter, because this is where the experience Chelsea want was actually forged. Henderson did not enter Liverpool as an unquestioned leader. He had to survive doubt, tactical changes, and the pressure of being judged against more celebrated players. Then he inherited the captaincy after Steven Gerrard, one of the heaviest responsibilities in English football. But that armband did not protect him from criticism. Every safe pass became evidence against him. Every bad result reopened the question of whether he was good enough to lead. The answer was not immediate. Liverpool lost major matches. They came close and failed. They reached the edge of the Premier League title and still finished behind Manchester City. They lost a Champions League final, then returned to the same stage and won it. Henderson lived through the painful distance between being brilliant and actually finishing the job. He learned how a dressing room responds after losing a final, how standards survive disappointment, and how a team returns without carrying fear into the next attempt. He also experienced international pressure with England, where every tournament becomes a national examination. Chelsea do not need the complete story of his career. They need the lesson inside it. He has seen talented teams fail because talent was not enough, and he has seen failure become the foundation of victory. The most important chapter of Henderson's career may demand something he has never had to prove before. At Liverpool, he led with the armband and the authority of a captain. At Chelsea, that authority will not arrive automatically. It must be earned inside a different dressing room, under a different manager, and among players who did not share his greatest victories. He may not start every important match. He may spend more time guiding than playing. Some nights, his contribution may be 20 controlled minutes. On others, it may be a conversation with a young player who has just made the mistake that cost Chelsea the game. That requires a different form of leadership. Can he accept a smaller role without allowing his influence to become smaller? Can he support the existing hierarchy rather than demand that listen through daily actions, not simply through the trophies attached to his name? Great careers often become difficult when the body changes faster than the identity. The player still remembers being central to everything, while the team needs him to become useful in a more specific way. Henderson must become less important on the team sheet, and more important between the names written on it. And this is where the transfer becomes bigger than one player. Chelsea have invested heavily in youth potential and long-term development, but young squads cannot wait forever to discover how elite teams behave. Eventually, talent must become structure, potential must become response selective. Henderson cannot guarantee that transformation. He cannot solve every tactical weakness or make every young player mature overnight, but he can shorten the distance between what Chelsea possess and what they are still trying to possess and what they are still trying to become. That is why this move matters. Not because a 36-year-old midfielder will suddenly become the best player at Stamford Bridge. Not because Chelsea are trying to recreate Liverpool, and not because experience alone wins trophies. It matters because development needs more than minutes. It needs examples. It needs communication. It needs somebody who understands the pressure of Europe, the scale of world football, and the painful process that exists between potential and victory. Chelsea already bought the pieces. Jordan Henderson may be the bridge that helps them fit together. They did not sign him to become the future. They signed him to teach the future how to win.